many of you have an audience you're trying to grow? That company database that you're trying to grow. But more than having it grow, you want to make sure that the people that are on the list are really engaging with your brand. They're really interested in what you have to offer because those are the people that are eventually going to buy from you, and they're then going to become loyal customer year after year. Today, I am so excited about my guest because she's going to tell us how she's been able to keep that audience growing with engaged records. She has 1.4 million active records across 60 different publications. Talk about a lot to keep track of. That is a lot. And Vesna Moore brings even more to the table because, yes, she can talk to us about audience growth, but she's also the compliance officer. So she understands that importance of doing it right, doing it with quality lists. But before we get started, my name is Donna Peterson, and you're listening to the B2B Marketing Excellence Podcast. I'm here to inspire success. I want to help you grow your business faster with efficient ways. And my guests are leaders, and they talk about their industry, their businesses, what are working, what's not, so that you can pick up on the tactics and implement them in your own business today. So let's jump in. Hello, Vesna. How are you today?
I am doing great. Thank you, Donna. How are you?
Good. But, as we were just talking, I can't believe it's Friday already.
Yeah, the weeks go by so quickly now,
I guess that's good. It's so funny. If you're busy, the weeks go by quickly. But if you're slow, it's almost like you're anxious that you're slow.
Yeah, you can't win either way you do it. So, but if I have to be, I'd rather be on the busy side of things for sure.
Oh, you and me both, because that's just my personality. It sounds like it's yours. If we're not busy,
yeah,
then
I'll just end up making other things work related that I need to get to. So
there has been times where I felt like I was sitting and it was quiet, and I go in my head going, there has to be something you should be worried about.
that's when the wheels start turning and more stuff kind of starts coming up, and you end up with way more work on your hands than you wanted to.
Yeah, and then when you look back, you're like, yeah, it wasn't really that important. I need to be doing that on the weekend. So always interesting. So we met at the Omeda show recently, and I was just very impressed by Annex. And then when I was talking to you, you have 750,000 subscribers.
Yes, that's correct. Active subscribers to the magazines directly. We then have another 750,000 email only recipients. So our all-in database is about 1.4 million of active recipients to our products, one way or the other.
That's a lot of people to keep happy,
to
keep offering them valuable content. And I'm wondering, how do you leverage, your marketing research, the profiling, the segmentations to implement successful campaigns to these individuals?
Well, across our company, we have over 60 brands, and each of those 60 brands fall into a certain industry, a certain niche, as we say. And we have to treat each one of those brands independently when we're doing any kind of audience development, because they're all very different. We're a B2B company. We are going to plant managers, we're going to chiropractors, depending on the publication that we're trying to service. So we do a lot of things holistically. We do a lot of list acquisition work holistically. So we'll look for a really good resource or resources in lists. And we've been doing this forever and a day. I've been doing this for over 30 years, and the premise hasn't changed. It's getting that quality of data, getting that targeted, segmented audience that is going to be relevant to the title that we're trying to serve, relevant to the market that we're trying to serve, and engaged with our product. People that are going to want to receive it, that are going to actually read it and click on things that we send them. So there's a lot of different KPIs that we look at when we're trying to resource a lot of these different lists. And those KPIs start with the quality of the list. And
Yeah.
lists are, they can be questionable at best sometimes.
I call it the Wild West.
It absolutely is, especially now because it's so much easier for people to compile lists
Yes.
in many ways. And I don't think a day goes by when I don't get at least one email offering me a list of some kind.
Yeah.
And sometimes these companies are scrupulous and sometimes they're not. And, you know, more than once I've heard of, you know, cases where people have received these emails and the list sounds terrific. It's exactly who they want to get into their portfolio. And they end up, you know, giving their thousands of dollars to this company, and they either don't see a list at all, they just never hear from them again,
Yeah.
or the list that they get is 90% unusable. Yeah. So, I mean, I've had people approach me and want to sell me my own list for an event that Annex has put on. It's our event. And that's where, you know, you reply saying, hey, hang on, you know, you don't have the rights to sell this list, cease and desist. But it's really difficult to determine who to use and who not to use. So we have sort of three different levels. We have the general sort of lists that we buy, like the Zoom Infos and the Dun & Bradstreets, the Pinpoints of the world. And they're decent lists. They're good starting points.
Yeah.
And we see usually around 60 to 70% usability of those lists. So that means 30 to 40% right off the bat are not going to get delivered or anything like that. But we know that, and we account for that when we're looking for the numbers that we're trying to hit and things like that. Then there's, you know, lists that we cultivate ourselves. We have other third-party vendors that we use in a, you know, great sort of guidelines on how they can go about getting our data and sourcing our data. And we ensure that, you know, there's no scraping, there's no harvesting, there's nothing that's going on that's going to be any kind of compliance concern with these names. And those are usually when we have a very, very specific target, a very specific market to try and get to.
Yeah.
And those ones come out around the same, around 70% usability. I think, you know, we have a lot of partners that we deal with that help us in our success.
Yeah.
We get at least 250, 300,000 new names in every single year into our process through these sort of efforts. But the real, you know, the real monster here is not just getting the lists, but it's how do we now clean the lists? How do we now ensure the target is right? How do we now ensure that the relevance is there and that the engagement is going to continue on our files? Because unlike 20 years ago, you know, a lot of our KPIs are looking at engagement, and we're able to see that now, whereas before we assumed people would read our magazines when it landed on their desks, but you know, and we'd hear from people and we'd survey them and stuff through the phones, but now we really know. So it's really important that the quality of the lists that we're getting are keeping that engagement strong. So we use a lot of lists, but we also do a lot of our own internal efforts. So when we get a list, it's not as simple as throw it on, you're good to go, you've got what you want.
No, yeah.
It's never that easy.
No.
So we have an entire program in place that really vets those lists. And as a publishing company, we spend between lists and marketing to those lists and re-verifying those lists, we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on.
That's your bread and butter. You know, that's how you're going to grow your subscriber base, is by those lists. And like you said, if you don't go through and verify the information, you'll just be putting bad data into your good database, which doesn't make sense. And I have to tell you, I worked with a publisher that did that, and the whole thing was a big mess. We had to go through, and it was very time intensive. It was expensive to go out and weed out good, bad, and the extremely ugly.
And there's always the extremely ugly on everything we end up getting at some point. But yeah, it is really important that, you know, when people come to us as a publishing company to reach our audiences, to get their marketing message across for their brand or their product, it's really important that they understand the difference in the data, that first party data that we collect is going to be engaging a lot better than any other list source you're going to get out there. So, you know, back to my point about, you know, the different types of lists that we get, you know, you're lucky on a list if you get 60% usability.
Right.
End of the day, after all of our efforts, all of our marketing tactics, all of our re-verification efforts, all of our data accuracy points and everything else, we are at a 98% deliverability rate. So
Well, you're using those files for your own publication. So as a publisher, it's in your best interest. If a magazine isn't delivered, you turn right away and you get either you re-verify the information or you delete that person from your file.
Yeah, exactly. Our data is a living entity. It is
Yeah.
constantly being changed. It's self-reported to a large degree, and that's a big difference too. So, when you're buying lists kind of as list harvesters and things like that do, then you end up with, not a lot of good data versus when you're buying it from a publisher, that data has been vetted, it's been cleaned, it's been used in a very direct way by the publisher for that engagement point for that audience. And at the end of the day, your opens and your clicks and your visibility is going to be much higher as well.
Yeah, definitely. And what people have to realize is when these people are harvesting data, sometimes they don't know for a fact my email is D. Peterson. They will go on, they'll look around, and they'll take a guess that it's D. Peterson, but maybe that's missing the D. Peterson. And so that's why so many of those emails end up being invalid.
Absolutely.
Just like yourself, I've done searches on some of the platforms and I think I've got this great file of 5,000. And then it comes back that, oh, there's only 1,300 that have valid emails. And it's like, okay, let's start over again.
And we have a lot of software that's available to us that can ping those emails when you get a list, and you can, check the email and validate the email. But it's looking at the validation of the email address as how it's built. It's not looking at total deliverability. And at the end of the day, a lot of these companies that are producing these lists, it's stale data. Their source that they're using is stale data. It's website information, and maybe the websites that they go to haven't been updated in 7 years. So those people and those emails are no longer necessarily valid. Whereas, you use a publisher's list, we are always accessing those contact points and re-verifying them and making sure that they're legitimate and they're deliverable.
Right.
So.
And you're using it, like we mentioned before, because you're using it on a regular basis, where if you're just harvesting or you're compiling a data, those people aren't sending a message to those individuals. So they don't know, are they being returned what? But as a publisher, you are, because your subscribers, and this is why a company like Annex won't sell your list, is because it is such a valuable asset for your company.
Yeah.
And this is what people have to understand out there in the list world. If it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Absolutely. If they're trying to sell you a list, for rock bottom prices, you've got to ask yourself, okay, what am I getting here at the end of the day? And two, we have an audit bureau that we have go through our lists on an annual basis, because most of our magazines are audited. A lot of our magazines are audited, and you have that third party that goes in and ensures the validity of, our claims as to who we say we're going to and how many we're going to. And we have to prove to them that, these people are being delivered, that they are the right audiences and everything that goes with that. So there's a lot of different things that go into keeping the files clean. And then you've got your audience platforms that you need to have that help you do a lot of that. So if you're with a good fulfillment house, or you're on a good internal platform that helps you do that, it makes a big difference if you can bring automation into that verification effort, so that as names are coming in, you have a process that goes out and verifies them and verifies they want the magazine and that they have interest in the magazine, and it verifies that they're in the right industry, right? And that great people to reach. So, partners matter a lot in the whole process, but bringing all those partners and putting them into a workflow and making sure that everything's talking to each other is kind of where we have to be really clear on what we want to get at the end of the whole process.
Right. And, that's keeping the file cleaned and updated, but also like on an Omeda platform, finding out those intricate segments within your full database. So is there, we might be CEOs at pharmaceutical manufacturing companies per se, but is this individual interested in drug discovery information? Is it toxicology? Is it, whatever it might be? But this is great. Like you said, if you can use automation that can really take the list and segment it down, And that's when I talk to clients and I'll say, you use a good industry publisher file, you'll save your sales team at least 5 steps.
I agree.
Because we're going to the right people. The information is valid and has been cleaned and updated. If you go to a good publisher like Annex, people are engaged, which means they're going to want to respond to your thing. But then you also know what they're interested in. And
Yes.
that's when you get to create those marketing messages that you send to them. And they're like, oh my gosh, they get me. They know what I need, and they're going to respond.
Yeah, and that does matter, because at the end of the day, we also now have, the ability to look at what people are engaging with, even within a brand, within a niche. So, on the Meta platform, as you mentioned, we have the ability to look at the categories and the topics that people are reading. So I can look at a topic of, environmental legislation, whether that's on one single brand or across all 60 of our brands, and get an audience that is highly interested in that topic, and be able to present that audience to an advertiser that has a solution for an environmental compliance program or anything like that. Also, too, what we can do is we can look at, okay, where do we want to service our readers even more? If we see a large engagement in a specific topic, maybe we need to create a newsletter that is specific to that topic and start answering some of the questions that, our readers are having. So there's a lot more access to that kind of data now than there ever was before. And learning how to use it has been kind of the thing we've been concentrating on in the last year or so, to be able to really make an impact one way or the other with that data.
Because when you do that, like you were just saying, yes, you can segment it for advertisers, but for Annex, if you know that there's a specific segment and they're interested in this, you'll create a newsletter or you'll create a webinar that offers value. And what you're doing there is you're reinforcing that relationship. You're reinforcing that relationship that really instills that trust, so that this subscriber is going to stay with you, because now you're helping them do their job. You're helping them stay current.
Absolutely. And that is the whole goal. When we reach out to these audiences, that's what we offer them. We're offering them, the latest in the technology for their industry. We're offering them the best content that we can provide to help them with their jobs. And as long as you're doing that, because that's the other side of this coin, right? Data is critical. We need to be able to go out to the right people, but the content needs to be just as good as the data that we're vetting. So if we're going to be sending the right message to the right people, you're going to have a lot more success. And that sort of, union is where we meet our sweet spot. That's where you see your engagement go up. That's where you see easy retention on your file, and people come back year over year over year to keep getting it. We also do a lot of readership surveys. Every other year, we do a very large scale survey. And we ask, or you go right out, you have the audience, you have the people. If you have questions, use that and go out and ask them, what are their pain points in their industries? What things do they need to solve right now today? How do they like your magazine? What content is it that they're looking for when they go to your magazine or go to your website? And get that kind of feedback right from the audience. That kind of information, that you'd be surprised at how explicit people can be and what they want when it comes to the content that you're delivering to them on a regular basis. And sharing that with your editorial folks and your publishers is critical.
Yeah. And it shows that you care. It shows that you're not just here trying to get them to take your magazine. You're there to really help them, and you want to give them the information exactly the way they want it. Whether they want to see more webinars from you, whether they want to get an ebook with all the hot tips or checklists, whatever it might be, it just shows that you're trying to always create a better experience for these subscribers, to give them as much value with this quality content that you have to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's so important, because then someone who's subscribing to your magazine is really in that space, and these are things that are top of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And then at the end of the day, that is our entire existence, is to do exactly that, right?
Well, that's how you've been able to grow. That's how come you have, what did you say, 1 million something subscribers? It's because people trust the Annex brand. They trust that you're going to deliver.
And at the end of the day, too, we're lucky here. We're here in Canada, in Toronto, and you know, all of our titles, most of our titles are the #1 title in the country, as far as deliverability and as far as content and as far as just being the brand leaders.
Good for
in the
you.
market.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so we're lucky in that sense. We've got, you know, it makes my job a lot easier when that happens, because it's easier for people to request the magazine. It's easier for people to want the magazine and to keep people on at the end of the day. So if you can get there, that's a good place to be for sure.
Definitely. Well, now I think you've already answered this for us. Besides being on the audience side, you're also the compliance officer.
Yes.
And I think you already said that kind of some of the checks and balances you put in place to grow your audience and make sure that the audience is growing in an ethical way with quality people. Is there anything else you want to add to that we haven't touched on already?
Yeah, I'm not sure how many of our viewers here would know, but in Canada, we passed one of the strictest anti-spam legislations in the world back in 2014, if you can believe it. And we struggled with it a lot when it first came out. It was really, really difficult to understand the legislation. There was conflicting information in the legislation.
Yeah.
It was really, really tough as a business to understand where our risks are, where we could mitigate any risks, and to try and put processes and you know, implement systems and everything that's needed in order to stay compliant. So we had to do it. We had no choice. And I think a lot of the states are in similar situations where there's legislation either already come down or coming down, and implementation is tough. We did it federally, which I'm very thankful for, because you know, it made it easy. Once we did it, it was good all across. But we had to do a lot of best standards sort of practices. When I look back at that now, it's done two things. One is it's made prospecting almost impossible from an email marketing perspective. So because our legislation basically said you had to have some kind of consent in order to email someone.
Yeah.
There was two versions. One was an express consent where they literally said to you, yes, you can email me anything you like. Or under the B2B exemptions, and we were lucky to be B2B here, we could go under implied consent, which means that there's a whole bunch of rules that you need to follow, but you can, if they've shown an interest in your product or your brand, or they've given you your email address, you can go ahead and email them marketing pieces. So when I look back at that now, we had a couple of years where trying to prospect was almost impossible. We just couldn't get lists. Getting new names in with email addresses was really, really tough. It made our email database more valuable because you couldn't just go out and get emails. So people using our emails knew that we were with compliance and they didn't have to worry about CASL. So that was a bit of a bonus. But the other bonus has been, now when I look back, the quality of our list is just that much better.
Yeah.
It's that much more engaged. And we've found ways to be compliant and to grow. I grew our email database by over 30% last year.
Wow, excellent. Congratulations. That's amazing.
And just that alone is really great. That number is awesome. But
Yes.
within CASL guidelines has been phenomenal. And again, that speaks to that desire of people to want our content and to keep that content strong. And most of that growth came from introducing content gates onto our websites. And they looked like hard gates, but they were actually soft gates because we didn't want to minimize the traffic on our websites.
Right.
But we were able to put up a series of gates that would ask people for their information, ask them to subscribe to the newsletter and give us their email address and give us their implied consent to be able to send them stuff, and then convert those people to actual magazine subscribers. And oddly enough, when I look at the engagement of those people, those new people that were coming in from that gate, they were 17% more engaged than the rest of my readers on that.
How interesting.
They were
maybe because they were already going and looking around on your website. So here you have a person who is engaging and curious to find valuable content.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So if they've come in and they've looked at the content that's on our website, it's very niche. We know that they're a person that's interested in that industry or working in that industry. They're 90% the right people to offer a subscription to. And again, our content is free. So, you know, we put it out there. Anybody can search for it. Anybody can go to our websites and read our content. And we didn't even do this intentionally, these gates. We did it because our platform, Omeda, made it easy for us to do. So we thought, they said we can do these gates now. Let's pick a magazine and
Yeah.
try one. And we gave it 3 months and we watched all the numbers and went, wow, this is awesome. Okay, full rollout to all the magazines now.
Right.
And, we ended up, almost doubling, well, not doubling, but, 30 to 40% increase in our e-news size as a result of it. So that was an unexpected win, but one I'm happy to take.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we should point out to anyone who's listening, a 30% growth is an amazing accomplishment when you think nowadays, and anyone who's listening, think about when you're looking for information, don't you go looking all around, you go all over the internet, you're looking on TikTok, wherever it is that you're looking for information, but you don't always subscribe, right? We're all guilty of it, reading that free information. But here you were able to get that 30% growth. That's people who actually subscribe because they like the content so much.
That's right.
And so that's why I want to stress to the audience that that is a huge accomplishment in this day and age when media and articles and content are being thrown at people in all different directions.
And what it's actually allowed us to do now, because we've had this great growth, is we're now going back to our files and we're assessing who is our least engaged audiences on each and every brand. And we're going to go and we're going to, take 5% off the top of each of these markets of the unengaged, because I have these new names now that can compensate. And at the end of the day, hopefully that will make our opens and our clicks, our engagement numbers
higher,
better.
Yeah. And that's interesting because years ago, before we had all this automation, the big thing was grow your subscriber numbers. You wanted lots of subscribers and you wanted your audit statements to show that large number of subscribers. But now with this automation, it's not just about growing the database. It's about making sure that people are engaged.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And that is really the key point on why industry-specific publications are such a wonderful source for any company that's looking for marketing or advertising channels, is because these people are engaged and want to get information in these areas, and the information is self-reported. So, hey, if it's a magazine that Donna Peterson needs, I'm giving my true email address.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I'm filling in all the other details because I want you to give me the information that pertains to me.
Yeah. And back to your point about, size versus quality. I mean, if I could offer you a list of 100,000 emails and I could tell you that that list is going to bring you back 2 sales as a client, or I could say I can offer you this list of 10,000 emails and it's going to bring you back 2 clients.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it was really that 10,000 that mattered, even though that 10,000 was part of that 100,000 and everybody wants that big number. At the end of the day, it's the conversion that matters, and it's the sale that matters, and it's the lead quality that's going to matter. Because if I give you back 10,000 leads, you're never going to get through them all. Versus if I give you back 100 leads and they're the best 100 leads, you're in a much better position to actually close a sale at the end of the day. So that quantity versus quality is really important for people to understand when they're going out with any kind of marketing and spending marketing dollars on, business development of any kind.
Yeah. Well, World Innovators, as you know, is a 42-year-old brand, and it's always been quality over quantity, because like you said, you don't want to get 10,000 leads to follow up on if only that 100 are truly interested. And if they're engaged, you also don't want to just get one-off sales. You want to get those people who are so engaged that they want to stay with you year after year. Because as a publisher, I'm sure you don't want to be, yes, you grew 30%. Oh, we lost them. We're back down to here again. We got to grow. You're
Absolutely.
constantly doing this instead of just soaring up and increasing your database year after year.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want that roller coaster of numbers.
No.
My salespeople and my publishers would be losing their minds if their numbers were dropping.
We'd all be bald.
We would, yes. Trying to avoid that.
Thank you for listening to the B2B Marketing Excellence Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss our next episode. And in the meantime, if you'd like to talk to me, please feel free to send me an email to dpeterson@worldinnovators.com. Till next time, have a great day.